Hello and welcome to the Ghost Town Chronicles. This time we will be exploring 10 most eerie abandoned military bases in the United States. And before we start the video, I want to thank all of you for subscribing to the channel. It really means a lot and I'm very grateful for your support. Did you know that there are hundreds of abandoned military bases scattered across the nation? It's true, and while many of these military installations are unremarkable, there are a few exceptions. The most frightening abandoned military bases in the U.S. are found in places like North Dakota, Vermont, New York, and Alaska. Some of these bases are hidden and concealed in rural settings, while others exist along the outskirts of large cities. From acres of steel and rust to haunted ghost stories, these are places you may be too frightened to visit. Number 1. Mickelson Safeguard Complex. The abandoned military base in North Dakota is technically called the Stanley R. Mickelson Safeguard Complex. However, most of the locals refer to it as the Pyramid of North Dakota. Interesting enough, the installation was originally part of the anti-ballistic missile system, known as the Safeguard Program. The Safeguard Program protected the nation in the event of nuclear warfare. Accordingly, the Mickelson Safeguard Complex was designed to serve as a first line of defense. Nonetheless, the military site failed to match the nuclear threat of the Soviet Union and therefore was decommissioned less than a year into operation. The quick rise and fall of the Mickelson Safeguard Complex, along with its unique exterior, makes it notorious among abandoned military bases. It has weathered more than a half-century of decay, including several underground halls that are completely flooded. The Mickelson Safeguard Complex is not open to the public, and for some, it should remain that way. There are claims that the place is haunted, and even wild theories that connect it to the Illuminati. At number 2 is North Concord Air Force Station. The North Concord USAF Station in Vermont is another legendary abandoned military base. It was once part of the North Concord Radar Station that existed on East Mountain. The military installation was originally conceived in the 1950s like the Mickelson Safeguard Complex, and, like the former abandoned military base, was designed to thwart Soviet nuclear activity. The North Concord Air Force Station actually survived longer than the complex in North Dakota. In fact, at one point the military base housed nearly 200 servicemen that were on constant alert for nuclear strikes. Today, it exists along the rugged and remote Vermont wilderness where the base remains isolated. Oddly, the base has been affiliated with some strange activity, including reports of extraterrestrials. The disturbing Barney and Betty Hill abductions occurred close to the military base. Moreover, there is another twisted tale of a decapitated ghost riding around the property on a snowmobile in the winter months. Number 3. Fort Pike. Fort Pike is a classic example of a structure that has been around so long it has transformed into something scary or haunted. The 19th century Army military base was built following the War of 1812. Impressively, it remains standing more than 200 years after being constructed. Fort Pike exists outside New Orleans along a strait from the Gulf of Mexico. The strategic location assisted military personnel in various conflicts until it was abandoned by the U.S. Army in 1890. Today, Fort Pike is a National Historic Site and was once a popular tourist attraction. However, several storms, including Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Isaac, have caused significant damage to the structure. Number 4. Fort Jefferson. Fort Jefferson is rooted in mystery. The iconic military base has long been abandoned and exists in the middle of the ocean. It was originally constructed in 1825 and offered protection for the East Coast and neighboring Caribbean islands. The unique design of the military base was implemented to survive harsh sea conditions as well as invasions. Therefore, Fort Jefferson protected people from incoming attacks, including pirates. Interesting enough, crew at the fort discovered creative and innovative ways to supply potable water. Nevertheless, living on the military base was not easy for anyone. Fort Jefferson was also utilized as a makeshift prison following the Civil War. Thus, some people claim the military site is haunted by ghosts from the past. Number 5. Adak Station. Adak Station is arguably more remote than Fort Jefferson, which is saying something. The former military base exists on an island outside Alaska. It was built during the Aleutian Island Campaign, in which U.S. forces fought Japan for control over several crucial islands. Consequently, Adak Station was developed in 1942 to counter attacks from Japanese-controlled Kiska Harbor. Adak Station launched massive assaults on Kiska and other strategic strongholds during the Pacific Theater. In fact, some of the craters from the bombing run on Kiska remain visible from Google Maps. Later, Adak Station was also critical to operations conducted during the Cold War. Nonetheless, once the Soviet Union fell, so did Adak Station. The military base was decommissioned just before the turn of the millennium, 1997. It now sits empty against the frigid Alaskan landscape. Number 6. Fort Tilden. Impressively, Fort Tilden was involved in 3 major conflicts. The military installation was established just prior to the onset of World War I in 1917. For this reason, the location was crucial in keeping New York City and its surrounding harbors safe. Then, a massive weapons system and concrete encasement was added during World War II. Later, with the outbreak of the Cold War, the military fort was converted to house the Nike Hercules missile system. The Nike missile system featured nuclear strike capabilities and was used at other abandoned military bases on the list. Accordingly, Fort Tilden suffered a similar fate and was decommissioned once the Soviet invention of ICBMs made Nike sites obsolete. Fort Tilden was finally completely abandoned in 1995. Since then, the area has been neglected with vines that dominate the facade. Moreover, graffiti and other signs of nefarious activity are present. Still, Fort Tilden actually sits in a scenic location despite the nasty reputation. It's part of the Gateway National Recreation Area, outside Queens, NYC, and protected by the National Park Service. Number 7. Titan Missile Complex. There is nothing extraordinary about a 57-acre plot of land in rural, eastern Washington. However, those that are willing to dig deeper find something remarkable. The Titan Missile Complex exists underground, 155 feet to be precise. There, several former nuclear silos are concealed. The military complex was created in the 1960s for Titan I rockets. Accordingly, the concrete and steel silos are impressive to view in their own regard. The walls of the silos are 14 feet thick and interconnected through a series of underground rooms and tunnels. Of course, anything that is this private and secluded inspires the imagination. For this reason, there is a ton of speculation regarding what you may find inside the complex. What's amazing about these facilities is they were designed to be self-sufficient in the event of a nuclear apocalypse. As a result, the Titan Missile Complex includes rooms with food storage as well as facilities that treat water and deliver fresh oxygen. Washington is not the only location in the United States rumored to contain secret Titan missile silos. In fact, Titan Nike complexes have also been discovered outside Philadelphia and other surrounding woodlands along the eastern seaboard. Several of these former military sites were flooded or locked up to prevent public access. Be that as it may, some seek to explore these mysterious places through creative methods such as scuba diving, despite the dangers and risks. Number 8. The Ghost Fleet. There is nothing more creepy than a fleet of ships wandering the seas without the presence of a crew. And it's not just something out of a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. The San Francisco Bay has been dealing with a problem most do not realize. For the past half-century, Sassoon Bay and its ecosystem has been threatened by ghost ships, and lots of them. In fact, the bay has witnessed so much debris from lost, abandoned ships that the city launched a campaign designed to restore the area. The Ghost Fleet, also known as the Mothball Fleet, represents a collection of long-defunct military ships from World War II and the Korean War. Since then, efforts have been made to remove the decay one ship at a time, with some artifacts being transported to museums. Meanwhile, another ship of the U.S. military, the USS Hornet, features a frightening reputation. It's rumored to be the most haunted ship in the U.S. Navy since more than 300 people have been killed aboard it. Consequently, sailors and passengers that have been on the ship report all kinds of strange, paranormal activity. For example, some claim to have heard strange voices or spotted ghosts in outdated uniforms roaming the halls. Additionally, radios and other equipment have been known to turn on and off without explanation. Number 9. Fort Leavenworth. Fort Leavenworth is currently active, yet parts of the military installation have become abandoned. Why? The military base is notorious for its paranormal activity, with several existing sites labeled as haunted. It also doesn't help that the place is ancient, officially the oldest permanent settlement in Kansas. Furthermore, Fort Leavenworth has a conflicted history. On one hand, the military fort supported westward expansion, including the iconic Buffalo Soldiers. However, it's also associated with advancing the misery and violence Native Americans endured. Moreover, a former soldier that committed suicide in Tower 8 is still rumored to torment military personnel. Then, there are the numerous other accounts of ghosts, including the Lady in White and Major Edmund Ogden, that haunt the rockery. Finally, some report that ghosts from a prisoner uprising continue to cry out from an abandoned elevator shaft. Fort Leavenworth remains the only active maximum security prison for the Department of Defense, DoD. Number 10. Fort Monroe. Fort Monroe is another former military base linked to paranormal activity. The site is currently managed by the National Park Service at Old Point Comfort, the southern tip of the Virginia Peninsula. Fort Monroe, along with Fort Wool, were constructed to guard the channel between Chesapeake Bay and Hampton Roads. Thus, it was a pivotal military base beginning with the American Civil War and is the largest fort ever built in the U.S. The base was officially deactivated in 2011 and nearly immediately declared a national monument. It's also rumored to remain haunted by historical figures of the past, including Edgar Allan Poe and Abraham Lincoln. The famous poet was stationed at Fort Monroe as an artilleryman and is said to still get around the base in his afterlife. And that is it for today. Thank you for joining in. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.